The quiet in the morning is louder than it used to be. I still wake up at 6, expecting to hear the kettle rattle and her slippers brushing against the kitchen floor. And for a few seconds I forget that the house belongs to only one heartbeat now. My name is Daniel Hartman. I'm 83 years old, and my wife Margaret passed away last spring. We were married for 58 years, and there is something I have been turning over in my mind ever since she left. There were 4 small habits she carried into her 70s, things she did almost every morning after she turned 70, and I wish I had understood sooner how much they were quietly taking from her. Margaret was never a careless woman. She raised 3 children, kept a tidy home, remembered every birthday in our extended family, and could stretch a dollar further than anyone I have ever known. But when she crossed 70, something subtle shifted. It was not dramatic. It did not look dangerous. It simply settled in like dust that no one notices until the light hits it just right. Every morning began the same way. The alarm would ring at 6, though neither of us truly needed it anymore. I would sit up slowly, feeling the stiffness in my back, and she would already be swinging her legs over the side of the bed. The first habit began there. She would reach for her phone before her feet even touched the floor. At first, I thought nothing of it. The grandchildren had convinced her to get a smartphone for video calls. She liked seeing their faces, liked showing them her garden through the tiny camera. But after 70, the phone became the first voice she listened to every day. News alerts, health articles, messages from friends about someone else who had fallen ill, someone else who had passed away, prices going up, storms coming, politics turning ugly. She would scroll with her brow tightening, her mouth pressing into a thin line. I would say, "Good morning, Maggie," and she would answer without looking up, already absorbed in the worries of a world she could not control. I began to notice that her mornings started with tension. Before sunlight, before coffee, before prayer, she was feeding her mind with urgency. It changed the tone of her whole day. She became quicker to worry, quicker to sigh, quicker to assume the worst about small aches in her body. One morning, she read about a woman her age who had sudden heart trouble. Margaret spent the entire day touching her chest, asking me if I thought her breathing sounded different. By evening, she was exhausted, not from illness but from fear. I should have said more. I should have gently told her that the first breath of the day deserves calm, not alarm. Instead, I told myself she was an adult and had every right to read what she wished. The second habit came right after the phone. She would skip breakfast, almost proudly. In our younger years, she made eggs, oatmeal, toast, something warm that filled the house with comfort. But once she hit 70, she began saying she was not hungry in the morning. "I don't need much anymore," she would say, waving me off. She would pour herself a thin cup of coffee and call that enough. I did not argue much. I was never the cook between us. If she said she was fine, I believed her. But I started noticing how her hands trembled slightly by mid-morning. She would feel lightheaded when standing up too quickly. Sometimes she grew irritable over the smallest inconvenience, and later admitted she felt weak but did not want to fuss. There is a pride that can settle into older age, a quiet refusal to admit that the body still needs tending. She believed eating less meant she was being disciplined, not realizing that at 70 the body is less forgiving. It needs steady fuel, gentle nourishment, protein to hold on to muscle, something solid to ground the day. One morning, she nearly fainted while watering her roses. I rushed outside when I heard the hose clatter. She brushed it off, saying she must have stood up too fast, but her face had gone pale, and in that moment I felt a small crack of fear open in my chest. Still, the habit continued. Coffee first, food later, if at all. The third habit was quieter, more hidden. After breakfast, or what passed for it, she would sit in her favorite armchair by the window. That chair had held her through decades of knitting, reading, mending clothes. But after 70, it began to hold her longer than it should have. She would sit and think. Thinking, in itself, is not harmful. But her thoughts drifted toward the past more than the present. She replayed mistakes, conversations from years ago, moments with our children when she feared she had been too strict or not strict enough. She worried about being a burden someday. She worried about losing her independence. She worried about me dying before her, or worse, her dying and leaving me alone. I would suggest a walk around the block. In a minute, she would say. The minute often stretched into an hour, the hour into half the morning. Her body grew stiffer. The less she moved, the less she wanted to move. I noticed that on days when she walked early, even just 10 minutes in the fresh air, her mood lifted. But on days she stayed in that chair, her shoulders curved inward as if she were folding into herself. There is something about the morning that sets the tone for aging. Movement invites life. Stillness, too much of it, invites decline. I did not have those words back then. I only had a feeling that we were letting something slip. The fourth habit was the hardest for me to face. She stopped telling me when she hurt. Margaret had always been strong. She gave birth to 3 children without much complaint, managed a household on a tight budget, and cared for her own mother through illness. But after 70, when her knees began aching and her sleep grew restless, she minimized it. In the mornings, I would ask, "How did you sleep?" "Fine," she would answer, even when I'd heard her turning and sighing half the night. I would see her wince slightly when standing, but she would smile and say it was nothing. She did not want to become what she called an old woman who talks about her pains. So she kept quiet. Silence can be a heavy thing in a marriage. I sensed her discomfort, but did not press hard enough. I respected her privacy, perhaps too much. By the time she finally agreed to see a doctor about her persistent fatigue, we discovered issues that had been quietly growing for months. None of these habits looked dramatic on their own. Checking the phone, skipping breakfast, sitting too long with worry, hiding discomfort. They were ordinary, almost invisible. But over time they braided together. The anxious mornings fed her fears about her health. The lack of nourishment drained her strength. The inactivity stiffened her joints and dimmed her mood. The silence delayed help that might have eased her burden. I'm not telling you this because I believe these habits alone took her from me. Life and death are more complex than that. She had her diagnoses, her treatments, her long nights in the hospital with machines humming softly around her. We had our final conversations, our hands intertwined, her voice thin but steady. What I am telling you is this. Aging is not only about the big events. It is about the quiet rituals that repeat every morning without question. After she passed, I found myself sitting in that same armchair, phone in hand, scrolling through news that tightened my chest. I skipped breakfast one day, then another. I told our daughter I was fine when she asked how I was sleeping, and suddenly I saw her, not in front of me, but in my own reflection. Grief has a way of sharpening understanding. I realized that if I continued in those small patterns, I would follow her path more quickly than I needed to. So I changed my mornings. I leave the phone on the kitchen counter until after I've washed my face and opened the curtains. I let the light come first. I make oatmeal, even when I do not feel hungry. I slice a banana into it the way she used to for the children. I walk to the end of the street and back, slowly, feeling the air in my lungs, and when my knees ache, I say it out loud. I tell my doctor, I tell my son. I do not hide it as if pain were a personal failure. I speak to her sometimes while I do these things. Not in a dramatic way, just a quiet acknowledgement. I'm taking care of us, I say. If you're listening to me and you're in your 70s, or approaching them, I'm not here to lecture you. I am an old man in a quiet house, sharing what I have seen with my own eyes. The morning is a fragile doorway. What you carry through it shapes the rest of your day, and over years, it shapes the rest of your life. Do not let the first voice you hear be one of fear. Do not starve your body because you think you need less. Do not sit so long with your worries that they root you to the chair. And do not hide your pain from the ones who love you. I would give anything to sit across from Margaret one more morning and say these things gently, not as criticism, but as care. I would tell her that strength at 70 does not mean enduring in silence. It means choosing, each day, to tend to yourself with the same devotion you gave to everyone else. The house is still quiet at 6. The kettle no longer rattles on its own. But when I stand at the stove and watch the water begin to steam, I feel that I am honoring her not by clinging to what was, but by learning from it. If you wake tomorrow and the room is silent, take that as a gift. Breathe before you reach for worry. Eat before you claim you do not need to. Move before your body forgets how. Speak before silence grows too thick. We do not control how long we are given, but we do have a say in how gently we walk ourselves through the mornings we still have.